Stop what you are doing right now, because in the last 48 hours, the world has changed in ways we have not seen since the Second World War. The United States and Israel have launched a massive coordinated military strike against Iran, hitting 24 of its 31 provinces. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, 86 years old, is dead. Iran has retaliated by launching hundreds of missiles and drones at Israel, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Iraq, and Jordan. 3 American soldiers are confirmed killed. 9 Israelis are dead. Over 200 Iranians are dead, including 148 children at a school in the city of Minab. And right now, as you watch this, the Strait of Hormuz, the waterway through which 20% of the entire world's oil supply flows, is effectively closed. Oil prices have already surged 13% overnight. Analysts say if this doesn't stop, we could be looking at $120 per barrel oil and a global recession. This is not a drill. This is not a simulation. This is happening right now. Stay with me, because the next 25 minutes may be the most important news briefing you watch this year. Welcome back. If you are watching this on March 2026, you are living through what many geopolitical analysts are now calling the most consequential military escalation in the Middle East since the 1973 Arab-Israeli War, and some say it could be the spark that reshapes the entire global order. Over the next 25 minutes, I am going to walk you through everything that has happened, minute by minute, fact by fact, with verified sources from Al Jazeera, NPR, Bloomberg, CNBC, Reuters, the U.S. Central Command, and the Wikipedia Live article tracking the 2026 Israeli-United States strikes on Iran. No speculation, no sensationalism, just the hard, verified facts of what may be the most important news story of our lifetimes. Let us start from the beginning. On the evening of Friday, February 28, 2026, at approximately 10 p.m. Tehran time, the first explosions were heard in the Iranian capital. Within minutes, air raid sirens began sounding across multiple Iranian cities. This was not a small skirmish. This was not a targeted assassination like the strike that killed General Qasem Soleimani in 2020. This was a full-scale, coordinated, multi-front military campaign jointly executed by the United States Armed Forces and the Israel Defense Forces against the Islamic Republic of Iran. The operation has since been named Operation Epic Fury by American military officials, as confirmed by NPR and NBC News. According to Israel's Air Force, which made a formal statement early on March 1st, more than 200 fighter jets were deployed in what it described as an extensive attack against Iran's missile arrays, its air defense systems, and what the IDF called regime targets. The Israeli military said it dropped more than 1,200 munitions across 24 of Iran's 31 provinces within the first 24 hours of the operation. Let that number sink in. 24 out of 31 provinces. This was not a surgical strike. This was a nationwide military campaign designed to achieve what the Israeli Air Force explicitly called air superiority, and in their own words, to pave the path to Tehran. U.S. President Donald Trump, speaking to the American public from the White House, confirmed that the United States launched what he called a preemptive strike against Iran. Specifically, he said to remove threats to Israel. Trump's statement was reported by Xinhua, Al Jazeera, and NPR, among many others. The U.S. Ambassador Mike Waltz, speaking publicly, said the strikes were directed at 3 primary objectives: dismantling Iran's ballistic missile capabilities, degrading its naval assets, and ensuring, as he put it, that the Iranian regime can never, ever threaten the world with a nuclear weapon. This framing is important because it tells us that the nuclear file, which had been the subject of ongoing but fragile diplomatic negotiations between Washington and Tehran, was not resolved through dialogue. It was resolved through fire. The strikes hit Iran hard and hit it fast. CBS News reported that an intelligence source and a military source told CBS News on the evening of February 28th that 40 Iranian officials had been killed in the initial strikes, though they noted they were not clear whether these officials were in one location or multiple locations. That detail would become significant within hours. By the morning of March 1st, it was confirmed that among those killed were Mohammad Basseri, an official in the Iranian Ministry of Intelligence, and Gholamreza Rezaian, the head of the intelligence department of Faraja, the law enforcement command of Iran. President Trump himself relayed to NBC News that a large amount of leadership in Iran had been killed. But the single most seismic confirmation came from Israeli and then Iranian state media. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the 86-year-old supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the man who had held absolute religious and political authority over 90 million Iranians for more than 3 decades, was dead. The strike that killed Khamenei targeted his office in the heart of Tehran. According to Al Jazeera and the Wikipedia Live event article, the Israeli military later said it carried out a precise, large-scale operation targeting Khamenei at what it described as a central leadership compound. The supreme leader's daughter, son-in-law, and grandson were also killed in that strike. The impact of this single development on the entire conflict and on Iranian society cannot be overstated, and I will return to it in detail. But first, let us understand the full scale of what happened militarily across Iran during Day 1 and Day 2 of Operation Epic Fury. The Wikipedia Live event article, which is being continuously updated with cited sources including the New York Times, Reuters, and Radio Free Europe, confirms that U.S. and Israeli strikes impacted state radio and television headquarters in Tehran, the General Staff of Iran's Internal Security Forces, and the Thar Allah headquarters, which is associated with the IRGC. Explosions were reported near Azadi Stadium, Azadi Square, and the iconic Minab Tower in Tehran. The Iranian Red Crescent Society confirmed explosions near hospitals in Tehran and near its own peace building. Iran's nuclear-linked sites were among the primary targets for the United States, with the stated goal of permanently removing any pathway to nuclear weapons development. And then there is the single event that has drawn the most international condemnation, and that Iran is using as the emotional and political centerpiece of its retaliation narrative, the Minab school airstrike. In the southern Iranian city of Minab, a strike hit a school. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Esmail Baghaei told NPR directly, on the record, that 158 students were killed at an elementary school. Some of them are still under the rubble, he said. The Wikipedia Live article places the casualties of this single event at 148 deaths, with updates still coming in as of March 2nd. Iran has attributed this strike to Israel. This is the image, the burning school, the bodies of children, the mourning parents, that is circulating on social media and on state television across the Islamic world and the global south. And it is fueling both the Iranian government's framing of this as an unjust war and the popular anger that has the potential to draw more actors into this conflict. Now let us talk about what Iran did in response. Tehran had warned for months, explicitly and publicly, that if the United States or Israel attacked Iranian soil, Iran would respond not just against Israel, but against every U.S. military base in the Middle East. And on the evening of February 28th and into March 1st, it made good on that promise. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps confirmed that it launched attacks on 27 bases across the Middle East where U.S. troops are deployed, as well as on Israeli military facilities. The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson speaking to NPR said plainly, "This is an unjust war imposed on our nation, and we have no other choice other than fighting against this injustice." And he added, "We have no problem with the American people, and we believe that this is not their war. This is the U.S. administration's war of choice." Iran fired missiles and drones at Israel, including an attack near Jerusalem that killed at least 9 Israelis, according to Israeli officials. At least 40 buildings in Tel Aviv were damaged in Iranian strikes, the Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported, citing the city government. An explosion was reported in Tel Aviv's Gush Dan area on March 1st, with images showing extensive damage to residential and commercial buildings. But Iran also struck far beyond Israel. Let us go country by country so you understand the full regional dimensions of what is happening. Bahrain. Iranian missiles targeted the headquarters of the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet in Bahrain's Jubair district. This is one of the most strategically significant U.S. military installations in the entire world, the nerve center of American naval power in the Persian Gulf. Bahrain's Ministry of Interior confirmed that the country's international airport was also targeted with a drone, resulting in material damage without loss of life. A building in the Sif commercial district of Manama, the capital, was damaged. The IRGC claimed that 2 ballistic missiles struck the Naval Support Activity Bahrain base and, in what must be treated as an unverified claim, said 560 American troops were killed or injured. The U.S. Central Command, however, confirmed the verified figure. 3 American service members were killed in action, and 5 others were seriously wounded. President Trump himself confirmed this and said, and this is a direct quote from his statement, "There will likely be more Americans killed." He also stated that U.S. forces had sunk 9 Iranian naval ships and largely destroyed Iran's naval headquarters, though CENTCOM declined to confirm these specific claims. Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed that Iranian attacks targeted both Riyadh, the capital, and the eastern province, home to the world's most significant oil infrastructure, and the King Abdulaziz Air Base. Saudi Arabia officially reported no casualties as of Sunday afternoon. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, reportedly with U.S. backing, vowed to employ military force against further Iranian incursions into Saudi airspace, calling the Iranian strikes cowardly, given that Saudi airspace had been closed to U.S. and Israeli aircraft, meaning Iran was targeting a country that was not itself part of the attacking coalition, simply because it hosts U.S. military assets.
United Arab Emirates. At least 3 people in the UAE were confirmed killed and 58 others wounded, according to official figures. A Pakistani national was killed and 7 people were injured when debris from intercepted missiles and drones fell on a residential area near Zayed International Airport in Abu Dhabi. An Asian national was killed by falling shrapnel in a residential district of Abu Dhabi. 4 airport staff at Dubai International Airport sustained injuries. 4 people were injured at Palm Jumeirah after a fire in a building caused by falling debris. A yacht was photographed sailing past a plume of smoke rising from the port of Jebel Ali, an image that went viral globally and encapsulates the sudden, jarring collision between the Gulf's image as a prosperous, peaceful hub and the harsh geopolitical reality it now faces.
Qatar. At least 11 explosions were heard above Qatar on Sunday morning. The Qatari Ministry of Interior reported a total of 16 injuries from Iranian attacks. Iran also launched missile strikes specifically on U.S. military bases in Qatar, which is significant because Qatar has hosted American forces at Al Udeid Air Base, the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East, and has also served as a key diplomatic intermediary in the region. The fact that Tehran struck Qatar, despite Qatar's ongoing role as a mediator, signals that Iran is prioritizing military retaliation over diplomatic calculus at this moment. Kuwait. Iranian attacks were reported in Kuwait as well, though the full scale of damage there was still being assessed as of the time of this report. Jordan. The Jordanian armed forces reported intercepting 49 drones and ballistic missiles that entered Jordanian airspace. Jordan, which has previously cooperated with Western air defense efforts during Iranian attacks on Israel, mobilized its air defense systems and confirmed successful interceptions, though the government was careful in its public statements given the domestic sensitivities of being seen as a partner to American and Israeli military action. Iraq. The U.S. and Israel also targeted the Jurf al-Sakr base, also known as Jurf al-Nasr, in southern Iraq, which houses the Popular Mobilization Forces, the Iranian-backed paramilitary coalition. Iraqi state media confirmed 2 fighters were killed and 5 wounded in those strikes, with a later New York Times report citing 3 dead. In northern Iraq's semi-autonomous Kurdish region, powerful explosions were reported near the U.S. consulate and Erbil International Airport. Air defenses intercepted drone attacks in Erbil, according to official reports. Oman. Oman's Duqm commercial port was hit by 2 drones, injuring 1 person, according to Oman's state news agency. This is particularly significant because Oman has been serving as one of the key diplomatic backchannels between the United States and Iran over the nuclear file. The fact that Iran targeted a port in Oman, even with limited effect, suggests that Tehran is either unable or unwilling to preserve those diplomatic channels in the current moment of maximum pressure and grief. The most dangerous development of all, however, may not be any of these specific military strikes. It may be what Iran did to the global economy on the morning of March 1st. Iran moved to effectively close the Strait of Hormuz. Let me explain why this matters on a scale that affects every single person watching this video, no matter where you live in the world. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway, just 21 nautical miles wide at its narrowest point, with actual shipping lanes only 3 kilometers wide in either direction. That connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and then to the world's open oceans. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, approximately 20 million barrels of oil flow through this single choke point every single day. That represents roughly 20% 80% of all globally traded oil. The world's largest crude carriers carrying oil from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, Qatar, and Iran itself all pass through this channel. Approximately 84% of those crude flows are headed to Asian markets, primarily China, India, Japan, and South Korea. About 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas also passes through the strait, most of it from Qatar. A European Union naval mission official told Reuters on Saturday that commercial vessels in the region were receiving VHF marine radio transmissions from Iran's Revolutionary Guard, instructing ships that no ship is allowed to pass the Strait of Hormuz. Iran had not formally announced an official closure as of Sunday, but the practical effect was the same. As confirmed by Kepler, one of the world's leading vessel tracking and energy intelligence firms, commercial operators, major oil companies, and maritime insurers have effectively withdrawn from the corridor. Only Iranian and Chinese-flagged ships were continuing to transit in limited numbers. The result was immediate and dramatic. On Sunday night, when markets reopened, Bloomberg reported that Brent crude, the global oil benchmark, surged by as much as 13%, the largest single-day percentage gain in 4 years, touching the highest level since January 2025. WTI crude, the U.S. benchmark, opened Monday near $75 per barrel, up from Friday's close of $67. Brent opened near $82, up from $72. FX leaders reported Monday morning that analysts now see WTI targeting $100 per barrel and Brent potentially exceeding $120 if the strait closure persists. KPLR analysts speaking on March 1st projected Brent opening Monday in the range of $85 to $90, with an intraday potential above $88. Ali Vaez, director of the Iran project at the International Crisis Group, told Al Jazeera with remarkable clarity, closure of the Strait of Hormuz would disrupt roughly a fifth of globally traded oil overnight, and prices wouldn't just spike, they would gap violently upward on fear alone. He added, the shock would reverberate far beyond energy markets, tightening financial conditions, fueling inflation, and pushing fragile economies closer to recession in a matter of weeks. Energy analyst Bob McNally, president of Rapidan Energy Group, went further, telling CNBC, a prolonged closure of the Strait of Hormuz is a guaranteed global recession. He described a scenario 3 times the severity of the Arab oil embargo and the Iranian Revolution in the 1970s, events that caused some of the most profound economic disruptions of the 20th century. In response, OPEC Plus convened an emergency virtual summit on Sunday, March 1st. The Voluntary Eight group of major oil producers led by Saudi Arabia and Russia had previously been expected to announce a modest 137,000 barrels per day production increase for April. That discussion was shelved. According to FX leaders, the emergency meeting was now considering a potential hike of 401,000 barrels per day or more. But analysts immediately cautioned that this is largely symbolic, because the spare capacity of every Gulf producer except Saudi Arabia and the UAE is already being utilized, and more critically, Saudi Arabia's own East-West pipeline and the UAE's Fujairah pipeline, while they can route some oil around the strait, have a combined throughput capacity far below the 20 million barrels per day that the strait normally handles. CNBC energy analyst Tom Kloza summarized it well. The attack by Iran on other neighbors in the Persian Gulf changes the calculus, and the extent of the assaults put pressure on insurers to either aggressively raise tanker rates for Strait of Hormuz travel or balk at underwriting any traffic. Saul Kavanagh, head of energy research at MST Marquee, warned of a scenario that could drive oil prices into the triple digits while LNG prices retest the record highs of 2022. The Trump administration has reportedly discussed tapping the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, but that tool, while capable of calming markets short-term, cannot replace 20 million barrels per day of global supply disruption over the medium term. For countries like China, India, Japan, and South Korea, which together account for 69% of all crude passing through the strait, the implications are acute. India, as the world's third-largest oil consumer, is particularly exposed. China, which receives half of its crude imports through the strait, faces a similar crisis. The geopolitical irony is sharp. China and Russia are among the loudest international voices condemning the U.S.-Israel strikes, and they may soon face the worst economic consequences of the war they are condemning. Now let us return to the political and human dimension at the center of this story. the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and what it means for Iran. Khamenei was not just a head of state. In the framework of the Islamic Republic, he was the Valier Faqih, the supreme jurisprudent, a position that holds final authority over every institution in Iran: the military, the judiciary, the parliament, the presidency, the media, and the nuclear program. He had held this role since 1989, following the death of the Islamic Republic's founder, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. His death at the hands of a foreign military strike is, in the history of modern nation-states, an almost unprecedented event. The last time a sitting head of state was killed by a foreign military was in genuinely extraordinary historical circumstances.
Iranian state television confirmed Khamenei's death. Iran declared 40 days of national mourning. The Iranian Ministry of Defense issued a statement saying, "There will be no mercy or forgiveness in taking revenge for the leader." The country's Supreme National Security Council moved quickly to establish a 3-person temporary leadership council to govern Iran under Islamic law, while a panel of Shia clerics works to choose a new supreme leader, a process that, historically, has taken months.
The reactions within Iran itself were complex and telling. The New York Times, Reuters, Al Jazeera, and Radio Free Europe all published photographs and videos showing Iranians attending pro-government rallies, waving the Islamic Republic flag, and holding portraits of Khamenei demonstrating against the U.S. and Israeli attack. But simultaneously, as news of Khamenei's death spread, a different reaction emerged. Videos circulated on social media, despite a renewed internet blackout imposed by the government, showing Iranians in cities including Karaj, Qazvin, Shiraz, Kermanshah, Isfahan, and Sanandaj pouring into the streets in what observers described as expressions of joy, shock, and disbelief. Security forces were deployed to prevent civil unrest and, according to the Wikipedia Live article citing multiple sources, opened fire on some celebrants. In southern Iran, a monument dedicated to Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the founder of the Islamic Republic, was reportedly toppled. This internal dimension, the possibility that the very regime structure that Khamenei personified for 36 years could face an existential challenge from within during this military crisis, is one of the most consequential and least predictable variables in this entire situation. President Trump acknowledged this when he told reporters that new potential leadership in Iran has also indicated they want to talk, and that he planned to engage with them eventually. Earlier on March 1st, Trump had actually announced that the U.S. had agreed to continue negotiations with Iran, and he outlined what he called a 4-week timetable for the war, a statement that raised profound questions about whether this military campaign was designed from the start to be time-limited and negotiation-adjacent, or whether it could spiral beyond any timetable. The international reaction has been swift and sharply divided along predictable geopolitical lines. At the United Nations, Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the attacks in unequivocal terms, stating that the use of force by the United States and Israel against Iran and the subsequent retaliation by Iran across the region undermine international peace and security. Russia's UN ambassador Vasily Nebenzia called the U.S. and Israeli operation another unprovoked act of armed aggression and said, "The U.S. and Israeli military operation has been a betrayal of diplomacy." China's ambassador Fu Kong called the strikes brazen, condemned the threat of force, and called for respect for Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. He noted that it was shocking that the U.S. and Israeli attacks came in the middle of diplomatic negotiations between Washington and Tehran. The European Union issued a more carefully hedged statement. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and Council President Antonio Costa called the conflict greatly concerning and urged restraint. But simultaneously, in a significant development, a report on March 1st indicated that von der Leyen supports a credible transition of power in Iran, language that aligns with the position that the Islamic Republic's leadership, not just its military capabilities, must change. The EU's 3 major powers, the UK, France, and Germany, resolved to back, if needed, proportionate military defensive measures against Iranian drones and ballistic missiles, signaling the potential for direct European military involvement in intercepting Iranian projectiles. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer went further, stating that the U.S. could use British bases for defensive strikes against Iran. NATO issued a statement saying the alliance was closely watching the situation, while a senior NATO official told Stars and Stripes that missile defense vigilance had been heightened across the alliance's member states. Brazil condemned the strikes outright and called for adherence to international law. Among governments of the global south, the reaction has largely been one of condemnation, though the specific framing varies between governments that oppose U.S. hegemony broadly and those that simply oppose the humanitarian cost of the strikes. Israel, for its part, has shown no indication of slowing down. On Sunday, the Israeli Air Force said it struck targets in the heart of Tehran and described its ongoing operation as aimed at establishing total air superiority over Iran. The IDF declared it had also proceeded with strategic bombings of Beirut and the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon in response to what it called northern aggression by militants. RAF Akrotiri, the British air base on the island of Cyprus, reportedly saw activity in the first hours of March 2nd, further evidence that Western military infrastructure is being drawn into the operational perimeter of this conflict. Now let us take stock of the human cost as of the time of this broadcast. In Iran, the total confirmed death toll stands at over 201 people killed across strikes in 24 provinces. That number includes the 148 children and students at the Minab elementary school, a figure that Iran's foreign ministry confirmed to NPR. Iranian officials confirmed that hospitals in central Tehran were struck. The Iranian Red Crescent confirmed explosions near its own peace building in Tehran. Across the country, millions of Iranians are living under an internet blackout, air raid alerts, and the collapse of the government's central authority structure following the death of Khamenei. In Israel, at least 9 people have been killed in Iranian missile attacks. At least 40 buildings in Tel Aviv have been damaged. Israeli emergency and rescue teams have been deployed across multiple cities. An attack near Beit Shemesh killed several Israelis. Attacks near Jerusalem have killed others. Among U.S. forces, 3 confirmed dead, 5 seriously wounded, and others with minor injuries being returned to duty. U.S. CENTCOM confirmed these figures in an official statement on March 1st at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Trump has said more deaths are likely.